Well, thanks everyone, and welcome to the Shanty Show. My name is Stefan, and along with Richard, James, and Tim, we are Press Gang Mutiny. We're thrilled to be here with you. We're going to do something maybe a little bit different from what you might see at the other workshops or on the main stage. Over the course of the pandemic, we started a podcast called The Shanty Show, and we spoke to shanty singers from around the world, and we kept doing it a little less frequently than before, but in particular, whenever we get the chance at a festival to speak to some artists that we know and admire, we take full advantage of that. So we're thrilled today to have two great shanty singers joining us. Right next to me is Mr. David Jones. David moved here from, oh yeah, round of applause, of course.
That's a great studio audience experience. Thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome. So for those that don't know, David is really a stalwart of the New York shanty scene in particular, moving there in 1965. A member of more bands that I could name, but including Starboard List and the Bermuda Quadrangle. And we're super excited to have him here. We're going to ask him to sing a song in just a minute. But before we do, I'm also going to introduce Joseph down at the end there, Morneault. In addition to being a fine singer and shanty man, also the festival director for this very festival. So let's have a huge round of applause for Joseph. And in addition to doing some singing, we're also going to spend some time talking. I thought, as we were thinking about what we could cover with them, we actually have a through line of shanties in the Northeast and the sort of, the folk music scene here from the 1960s all the way up to this very festival. So I thought it could be really fun for us to navigate that journey a little bit together over the next 45 minutes. But you are all here for singing. So we're going to ask David if you might lead a song for us.
Okay.
We don't know what songs we're going to be singing today as well. So, we might need you to help back us up on some of the choruses.
I can sing a New England version of We'll Rant and We'll Roar. We'll rant and we'll roar like true Yankee whalermen. We'll rant and we'll roar on deck and below until we sight gay head of old Martha's vineyard, and straight up the channel to New Bedford we'll go. I've been a ship's cook and I've been a rigger. I can dance, I can sing, I can walk the harpoon, I can stand in the galley and cut a fine figure. Whenever I am in a ship's standing room, we'll rant and we'll roar like true Yankee whalermen. We'll rant and we'll roar on deck and below until we sight gay head of old Martha's vineyard, and straight up the channel to New Bedford we'll go. I went to a dance one night in Old Tombi's. There were plenty of girls as fine as you wish, and one fat old thing, she was chewing tobacco. Just like a young kitten, chewing fresh fish. We'll rant and we'll roar like true Yankee whalemen. We'll rant and we'll roar on deck and below until we sight gay head of old Martha's Vineyard. And straight up the channel to Bedford we'll go.
Thank you, David. And Joseph, it only seems fair for us to ask you to lead a song now as well, if you're comfortable.
Sure. Me being more of the late 18th century stuff, I'm less shanties and more what the sailors might sing in their own time, be it in pub, be it forecastle, be it when they're trying to upset their betters, as it were. This came from a Charles Murphy off the whaling ship Diana in 1819, where a lot of the songs were written down in private journals or letters, and very often were not meant for public consumption, so this one will remove those parts, given our location. It's a song about when the cat is away, the mice do play. Around Cape Horn the young men go, and when those young men are away, then those young girls dress up neat, and they go a-cruising down the street. And the chorus goes, right full day, right-o full day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day, right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day. If your tongue twists up, you can get it the next time around. Went out to see their sweethearts go, it's then they must have another beau. To wait 2 years they say they can't, but to wait 2 years they say they shan't. Right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day, right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day. Skein laces long will frill so neat, and bonnets worked so complete, with their painted cheeks and curled hair, that think to make the new men stare. Right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day, right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day. Far from the fields of the young men gone, far from home and all forlorn, I wish to God they've never been born, is to go a-cruising round Cape Horn. Right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day, right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day. When those young men do come home, this is the story that they hear. Welcome home, you need not fear, no one has courted me, my dear. Right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day, right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day. Bright false smiles I like for to wear, bright false bows and long false hair, white satin shoes with a silver bow, to take us young men all in tow. We are suckers. Right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day, right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day. Now to conclude and end my song, there's women tells me I am wrong, but if by chance they find I'm right, may they sing this from morn till night. Right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day, right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day, right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day, right full day, what-a-little day, right full ride-o, what-a-little day. And that's the version you can teach your children.
So fantastic. Thank you for that. So we're so pleased to be here talking about this. And Stefan, you mentioned a little bit about this journey that we're thinking of taking with David on this idea of folk music and the revitalization that we saw in folk music around the 60s. And I think that today we can spend a little bit more time on that journey, on that travel what happened in that folk revival, how that traveled to New York, and then how that grew into this wonderful community. A big part of it we're seeing at this festival today. So maybe we'll move over to David and just ask a little bit. Where did you start, and how were you singing in London? Who were you singing with? Where did you learn the songs that you were singing?
Well, I'd been working in East Africa in the early 60s, and I went back to London in, I think it was 1965, 64, I think, and just wandered into some folk clubs. There was one folk club called the Troubadour, which is an Earl's Court, and it was a favorite club for many singers because it wasn't in a pub, and so I didn't have to shut up at 10:30 like all the other clubs did. So singers who were singing in other clubs during that night would, after their gig, come over to the Troubadour and sing.
The after party. The
after party, yeah. It's where I first heard The Young Tradition, Frankie Armstrong, and many, many others. And the big influence on me was Louis Killen, whose singing I admired tremendously, and got to know him very well in California, where he had moved out to California, and I had to San Francisco, as a matter of fact. And so many of my bigger songs I took from Louis Killen. Others I learned from, the great Tim back there.
I'm curious to know the role that shanties played within the broader folk music tradition at the time, because, we say folk music revival, and that's a very broad thing, all the way from very traditional to Bob Dylan. Was shanties just part of that?
Well, there was what I think is still one of the best recordings of sea songs. I think it's called Farewell Nancy. It has Cyril Tawney, Louis Killen, Bob Davenport, the fiddler, Dave Swarbrick, and they're just singing wonderful songs, very simply. And this came out in quite early 60s, and I think I learned all the songs on that. And why were sea shanties so popular? I think because they were so easy to join in on. You didn't have to know any expert harmonies or anything like that. You just sing along. And when I came to New York City, I wandered down to the South Street Seaport, and there was these two guys wandering around the pier there singing these ribald songs, and that was Bernie Clay and Frank Werner. And so I joined them in singing on the pier there, and that sort of emerged into what they call themselves, the Ex-Seamen's Institute. Yeah. They called themselves the Seamen's Institute, but then the real Seamen's Institute objected, so Bernie put the X in front.
Amazing. As you do.
So you made a really quick jump from London to New York in the story there. Can you fill in a few blanks? I'm curious what brought you from the UK to New York, and how was music different in between the two places?
Well, what brought me was a job. Music, when I first came to New York, you didn't hear many sea shanties at that time. It was mostly, I used to go down to Gerdes Folk City on a Monday night. And the MC was this actor named Dominic Chanisse, who went on to play a big part in The Sopranos. He was Uncle Junior. And he was a grand fellow. And who would come in there on a Monday night for the hootenanny? It was just, Sandy and Darlington, so many. Dave Bromberg walked in, this skinny kid walked in one night, this is about 1966, and he got up there and played the guitar, and everyone just was amazed. But at that time, I can't recall any particular impetus on sea shanty singing. I think the drive actually came from Louis Killen. I know that Frank Werner and I believe Bernie Clay went up to the Pinewoods folk music camp. I think it was in 1965, and Louis was the guest there singing, and Frank Werner said that that changed his life. And he was an old sailor. He even had a tattoo to prove it.
And the singing continues to this day at the South Street Sea Museum. How did that sort of become established?
Well, it's quite different now because the old pier, they didn't have all those modern buildings. It was just a rough old pier there, and the boat they had in there was the Lottie Howard. That's a little Gloucester fishing schooner, and we used to stand on the deck of this Lottie Howard and sing to the people gathered there on a Tuesday evening. And it became quite a family thing, people brought their children along and the picnics, and we had to try and tone some of the lyrics down, because some of the old shanty singers really believed you had to sing the real thing, and you really don't, So, but that's where I first really got into singing sea shanties. I mean, I knew sea shanties because we sang them at school. At school, we sang Bobby Shafto and a bunch of other songs. Tim might remember some of the songs, and David might remember some of the songs we sang at school. But there were a lot of sea-type songs. But when I first came to New York, there was no really strong established sea shanty singing scene at all, And I think it was Bernie and Frank that got the whole thing started in New York.
Cool. And when might that have started really? When did the shanties start gaining
I think they started in 1965.
Okay.
Both of them, I think both of them have been at the Pinewoods Folk Music Camp up in Cape Cod, and they were very enthusiastic about it. And I remember Bernie always used to start in an impossible key that no one could get up there with, and then he had to stop and come down a bit. And but they were a grand pair.
Well, I think it's probably a good time for us to sing another song. I don't know if there's one that stands out to you from a Louis Killen, later Louisa Jo Killen, or a song that you have fond memories of or association with the South Street Sea Museum?
Well, there's one we used to sing. The rain, it rains all the day long. O'Reilly, oh, O'Reilly, and the northern wind, it blows so strong. O'Reilly, oh, has gone away. Goodbye, my sweetheart. Goodbye, my hero. O'Reilly, oh, O'Reilly. Goodbye, my darling. Goodbye, my hero. O'Reilly, oh, has gone away. Come now, Molly, don't look so glum. O'Reilly, oh, O'Reilly. Come White Stocking Day, you'll be drinking hot rum. O'Reilly, oh, has gone away. Goodbye, my sweetheart. Goodbye, my hero. O'Reilly, oh, O'Reilly. Goodbye, me darling. Goodbye, my hero. O'Reilly, And of course, there's more verses. The little interesting reference in that White Stocking Days is that there was a provision in the shipping code that allowed the wives of the fishermen or sailors while we were out at sea to go down to the shipping office and collect half of their husband's salaries. And so that was the time to put on your best clothes, and what they did with half of the salaries, of course.
I always pull that one out a little bit when I'm taking off for work travel, and my wife is saying how, we'll miss you in this. Don't worry, dear. By White Stocking Day, you'll be drinking hot rum. I don't think it goes over as well these days as it used to.
No. The reference isn't as appreciated.
Well, Joseph, maybe we can come to you, because if I'm not mistaken, there has been a shanty sing in this town at the Griswold Inn for about 50 years, which, if I'm doing the math, is 1970 something.
Yeah, so. Cliff Haslam was brought in by Bill Winter, who owned the Griswold Inn at the time. He wanted to create sort of for lack of another phrase, at the top of my head, sort of Colonial Williamsburg-esque look. So as soon as you leave the church, you go down towards the Griswold Inn, you notice it's sort of a campus of old buildings, the Hayden families and Pratts and stuff. And Bill Winter really wanted to, I have to choose my words carefully, create the impression of a Revolutionary War era village, that it was indeed a village during that time, just not necessarily what you're seeing there. And so he went fishing for a sea singer, somebody who would do something he felt would be in keeping with his vision. Went to Mystic Seaport to the Jolly Beggars, I think was the name of it, and he found this guy, short little limey, Cliff Haslam, and had him come on out just to do a test sing and said, "You're hired." That was in October of 1972. And so there's been singing at the Grizz since 72, minus the pandemic. And although the flag out front says Sea Shanties Tonight, as it has since 1972, it's really an amalgam of Old English songs, early American songs, drinking songs, other things meant more for an adult audience.
You did mention there, called a shanty sing, but much broader range of songs.
Right.
Could I just maybe get you to take on the completely uncontroversial question of what is a shanty?
If you spell it with an S, my apologies, David. If you spell it with an S, it's a shack alongside a body of water. I'm waiting for something to be thrown at me. No. A work song that's meant to coordinate the work that you're doing is often referred to as a shanty. If it's at sea, it's a sea shanty. But just because you mention a body of water, be it the pond next door or your bathtub, it does not make it a shanty in of itself. And if that work song is simply making references to the job that you're doing, I'm chopping up onions, I'm singing a song about it, does not make it a shanty. And even then, if you zoom in a little bit more on it, very often things like rowing songs are not necessarily referred to as shanties, rowing shanties, they're simply rowing songs. Having said that, it's become, unfortunately, in many of our opinions, the shanty has become an umbrella term for everything that sounds even remotely maritime, nautical, or Irish. So when I will say, as we talked about before, when somebody refers to, I would like to hear you sing the shanty, the Wellerman is not a shanty.
I do want to talk about this festival as well, which I think you have, and all the organizers have been very politic in the naming of. It is a sea music festival.
It's a sea music festival.
Yeah, which I think is
it's a very broader
umbrella. Yeah.
It encompasses a lot of things. A lot of the songs you're going to hear over this weekend are not shanties, but they are maritime based. If not specifically a song that a sailor might sing, it might have a lot to do with ballads of stories about things at the sea, or trades on shore that support or are immediately affected by the sea, or more contemporaneous songs that are written by phenomenal singer-songwriters that we seek to perpetuate their art. So,
I wonder, before we get to the festival itself and how it has come about and what we can hope for in the future, if I could entice you to sing us another song, shanty or otherwise.
My specialty is more in folk songs of the late 18th century as they made their way over to New England. And there's some of the collectors that went about early on would see songs in private diaries and journals and the like, say here in New England, and they would dismiss them, saying, "Oh, these aren't American songs; these are Old English songs," and they get shoved away into dusty bins in some historical society somewhere. And only recently are these things now actually being appreciated for what they are. And an example of this is a gentleman named Timothy Connor, who in 1776 was in a privateer, was captured by the British almost immediately upon setting out to sea. He and his crew spent the entire war actually in a prison over Folston prison. He, out of sheer boredom, started going about talking to other prisoners or guards or anybody else on support staff and collecting songs that they would sing. And a lot of these songs, a lot of the songs I can't sing here. And a lot of the songs that I can have actually trickled down in one fashion or another through the sea music genre, but they're referred to as English songs, so they don't think of them as American, even though these were sung by American sailors. Sailors, when they come into port, weren't supposed to have any hard booze on board ship, and they weren't typically allowed to go on land because they might run, so they would allow wives to come on board ship. They might not know what their names are, but nonetheless, there's my wife, would you please let her on board? And as long as she didn't bring any hard liquor, then that was permitted. And of course, they would fill bladders and put it underneath their skirts. And when they were being checked out, it wasn't like going into the airport today. You didn't get the big pat down or something. So they'd bring in the hard liquor down below, and then the guys would thumb their nose at the officers and say, "See, we can still get it." Our ship, she is arrived, and anchored in Plymouth Sound. We'll drink a health to all the girls that does our ship surround. And into the boats they get, and alongside they did came. Waterman call my husband, for I'm damned if I know his name. And the chorus goes, sing, ho, for the wives come from the shore, whoever they may be. Then up comes a nimble Jack Tar, he hearing what was said, right up to the officer of the watch, and he humbly bows his head. Sir, my wife, she's alongside, would you please to let her in? Why, yes, my lad, the lieutenant says, but see, she's got no gin. Sing, ho, for the wives come from the shore, whoever they may be. My wife, she never carries any. You scoundrel, I won't take your word. Midshipman Jones, you search that boat before she comes on board. Then up the side she comes, and down the bay she runs. It's 10 to 1 to me that she's a bladder or two of rum. Sing, ho, for the wives come from the shore, whoever they may be. Then down comes her hero, Jack Tar. Jenny, have you got anything? With that she up with her smock tail, hauls out 4 bladders of gin. I'll go get some beer that we may have some flip. The devils may damn us forever, but we can get it yet. Sing, ho, for the wives come from the shore, whoever they may be. Sing, ho, for the wives come from the shore, whoever they may be. 1776.
That was great. So I did want to ask you about this festival. I think pandemic was hard on a lot of festivals, and in a way, we've been particularly lucky in this little world of shanties. We had two brand new festivals start last year. One up in St. Martin's, the Fundy Sea Music Festival, and of course this one that we're all at this year. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how the festival came about.
We were in search of a new home. The previous 40 years were wonderful, but we were in a position we had to move on. And in 2016, 2017, there were a few of us here in Essex, where we, formerly Pettipog, now Essex, we wanted to create a one-day festival where we would get a lot of performers of maritime music who rarely, if ever, got into the other locations
there's a lot of really talented people who don't self-promote. You might see them in a little a town green performance, but they don't really get into the festivals. And we really wanted to start pulling those people in. Due to politics within that particular board we formed for it, it fell apart. The thing was shelved. And here we are a few years later when Jeff Paul, the Paul family owns the Griswold Inn and that entire campus over there. Jeff Paul calls me up. We started speaking over the length of my ride from work to home about what we might be able to do. And it was determined that we should revive that original attempt, but merge it with this particular Sea Music Festival. And the town was thrilled to have it involved. There are a lot of people dubious. They're used to, if you come to the Grizz on a Monday night, I sing with Cliff Haslam. We have a band, the Jovial Crew. Because it's a bar, we like to do a lot of ballads. We like to do a lot of historic songs, but very often the whole thing devolves into more of a not a pub sing, but a bar sing. And we will sometimes not pull any punches in singing original lyrics because we can get away with it in that atmosphere. But the result was that a lot of the locals were afraid that this was going to be a Woodstock. And so, so last year was last year was the litmus test. And for instance, we hired one police officer to keep an eye on things at the main tent, and they brought down 4 or 5 guys because they couldn't believe how well behaved all of you were and how the music wasn't amplified. It wasn't electric. It wasn't Bob Dylan. It wasn't. The result is that for this year, we were well embraced by the town and this church, for instance. And they really want to see it survive and thrive here in town for another 40 years or more. And with the tradition already existing at the Griswold Inn of the singing, they now see it as opposed to, oh, please, not that on my front yard, to this is great. It's now an extension of this. So you have a small deposit every Monday night of singing, but then once a year, we spill out into the streets. And here you are.
Gonna say. Yeah, I know I speak for the press gang guys, and I'm sure everyone else in this building, but thank you to you and to all of the organizers for this.
We are thrilled to have
special.
you, gents. We are thrilled to have David, who's been down to the Grizz with us, and thrilled to have all of you. Really, you're all what really makes this festival work. So,
can I ask any plans or aspirations? So there'll be people who are maybe hearing about the festival for the first time. Would you describe a little bit about what they might be able to expect as the festival continues and grows?
every time we have our board meeting, it's the Maritime Music and Tradition Society is what we've formed to actually put on this festival. And so we have a wonderful working board, tremendous people between them, the advisors, our volunteers, and we have all of these great ideas being given to us as each day progresses, and then we'll put them into a pot, so to speak, and we'll mix them up and decide what we can do, where can we expand, what is possible next year. We think we will be having our main stage down at the River Museum as we did last year for 2024, but you know what? We'll see what happens over the course of this year. There are more places that are interested in getting a piece of the action, so we might have more pop-up things. I don't know. We'll see what the year can bring, but I do know that we'll continue to bring you wonderful performers, wonderful music, and keep drawing you back because this is the place.
Amazing. I was having a moment when David was leading Bold Riley earlier. When we started this podcast, we were doing it over Zoom, and we had to torturously, independently record everyone's part and stitch it together. And to get to do this in a room that is singing back is just magical. And the other thing that this allows us to do that we obviously couldn't do when we were on Zoom is to let you guys ask any questions that you might have of David or of Joseph as well. So while we've got just under 10 minutes left, if there are any questions about anything we've discussed today or anything else, now is your time.
Keep it clean.
Keep it clean. Yes, we are still in a church. Oh, there. Yeah. Oh, all right then. That was not a plant.
Let me twist your arm.
Yeah. We can do a New England short drag shanty.
All right. When I was a little boy, so my mother told me, Timmy, way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. That if I did not kiss the girls, my lips they would grow moldy, Timmy. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Way haul away, we're bound for better weather, Timmy. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Well, first I met an Irish girl, she damn near drove me crazy, Timmy. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. And then I met an Essex girl, but she was slack and lazy, Timmy. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Way haul away, we're bound for better weather, Timmy. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. King Louis was the king of France before the revolution. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. But then he got his head cut off, it spoiled his constitution. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Way haul away, we're bound for better weather, Timmy. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. St. Patrick was a gentleman, he came from decent people, Timmy. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. He built a church in Dublin town, and on it put a steeple, Timmy. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe. Way haul away, we're bound for better weather, Timmy. Way haul away, we'll haul away, Joe.
Well, any other questions we have? I'm just getting the 5-minute sign right now. Well, then I think that pretty much brings us to the end. There's a few little housekeeping things. Big thank you. First to David Jones for joining us up here. And to Joseph for obviously being here with us and for everything else that he and the organizers do. Thank you. I'd like to thank Drew and the crew and all the volunteers on sound as well. Great job. Thank you. If you've enjoyed this and you'd like to see or hear more, we do have something like 22 episodes of the Shanty Show. You can either get it audio anywhere you find your podcasts, and they're all up on YouTube as well. It's been an absolute treat for us to be here. We're going to go and do a harmony workshop at 2:00 with the Johnson Gals, and we are Stout. And we'll be on the main stage as well tonight. So hope to see as many of you as we possibly can there. Really appreciate you joining us today, and enjoy the rest of the festival, everyone.
Very good.
So we are going to wrap up tonight with Toronto's Shantymen, who they forecast their arrival with a little bit of smoke effects here in the atmosphere, but now things have cleared up, and we're glad that we can hear them sing. So we're going to welcome to the grass Stefan, Tim, and James and Richard, who are known as Press Gang Mutiny.
Sorry about those wildfires. I told Tim to stop playing with matches.
Can't stop. I just
It's
love it.
literally the most Canadian thing you could do is get up here and apologize.
I went to church, I went to chapel, pull down below. I went to church, I went to chapel, pull down below. Away, Eagle Alley, pull down below. Eagle Alley in the valley, pull down down below. And on the way I saw an apple, pull down below. Yeah, on the way I saw an apple, pull down below. Away, Eagle Alley, pull down below. Yeah, it's Eagle Alley in the valley, pull down below. Now who's been here since I've been gone? Pull down below. Yeah, who's been here since I've been gone? Pull down below. Away, Eagle Alley, pull down below. It's Eagle Alley in the valley, pull down below. A Yankee mate with his big boots on, pull down below. A Yankee mate with his big boots on, pull down below. Away, Eagle Alley, pull down below. It's Eagle Alley in the valley, pull down below. Now who's been here since I've been gone? Pull down below. Now who's been here since I've been gone? Pull down below. Away, Eagle Alley, pull down below. It's Eagle Alley in the valley, pull down below. A limey mate with a cheese cutter on, pull down below. A limey mate with a cheese cutter on, pull down below. Away, Eagle Alley, pull down below. It's Eagle Alley in the valley, pull down below. I went to church, I went to chapel, pull down below. I went to church, I went to chapel, pull down below. Away, Eagle Alley, pull down below. Oh, it's Eagle Alley in the valley, pull down below.